The distress signal came from Kepler 442b at 3 in the morning ship time. Captain Jake Morrison rolled out of his bunk aboard the rescue vessel Defiant and rushed to the bridge where his communications officer, Amy Ross, was already working at her station. The message was garbled and full of static, but the words that came through made Jake's blood run cold. "Something came up from the deep mines," the voice crackled through the speakers. "It killed them all. We're trapped in the main building. Send help. Please send help." Jake had seen many emergencies in his 15 years as a rescue captain, but something about this transmission felt different. The voice belonged to Commander Zex of the Corvan Empire, a warrior race that feared nothing. In the known galaxy, if something could make a Corvan sound terrified, then it was serious trouble. The Defiant jumped to faster-than-light speed within an hour. Jake's crew of 20 humans prepared for what they expected to be another mining accident. Kepler 442b was a rich world full of rare crystals that powered the ships and cities across the galaxy. 3 different alien species worked together there in the biggest mining operation outside of the core worlds. When they dropped out of hyperspace near the planet, Jake saw immediately that something was very wrong. The orbital platform that should have been busy with cargo ships sat empty and dark. No traffic moved between the surface and space. The planet's main communication array was sending out an automated distress beacon that had been running for 3 days. "Take us down to the main facility," Jake ordered his pilot Nash Turner. "Keep the engines warm in case we need to leave fast." The mining complex sprawled across a flat valley surrounded by mountains. From the air, it looked normal enough with its collection of buildings and the massive drilling towers that reached deep into the planet's crust. But as they got closer, Jake noticed that many of the windows were dark and there was no movement in the courtyards, where workers usually moved between shifts. Nash set the ship down on the landing pad next to the main administration building. Jake suited up with 5 of his crew, including his science officer, Lisa Hayes, and his security chief, Rick Barnes. They carried standard rescue equipment and medical supplies, but Jake had a bad feeling that they would need more than that. The main building's entrance was sealed tight with emergency blast doors. Amy managed to override the locks from her position on the ship, and the heavy metal barriers slid open with a grinding sound. The corridor beyond was dark except for the red glow of emergency lighting. They found the first bodies 20 feet inside the building. 3 miners from different species lay scattered across the floor. Jake had seen many accident victims, but these were different. The bodies were not burned or crushed or torn apart by machinery. They looked like they had simply fallen down and died from pure terror. Their faces were frozen in expressions of absolute horror. "What could do this?" Lisa whispered as she scanned the bodies with her medical equipment. "There are no wounds or signs of poison. Their hearts just stopped." They moved deeper into the building, following the sound of voices from the central command room. Jake found 43 survivors from the mining operation huddled together in the reinforced chamber. Humans, Corvan warriors, Zephyrian telepaths, and crystalline archons all pressed together in a space meant for 20 people. Commander Zex was the first to speak when Jake's team entered. The 8-foot-tall warrior with his natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws looked like he had not slept in days. "You should not have come here, Captain Morrison. Nothing can stop this thing." "What thing?" Jake asked as Lisa began checking. "The survivors for injuries." "What happened here?" An elderly human miner named Bob Porter answered from his place near the wall. "We were working the deepest shaft when the drill hit something hard. Not rock or crystal, but something else. Metal, maybe. Old metal that had been down there for a very long time." Zex continued the story. "The drill broke through into a chamber. A big one. We sent down exploration teams to see what we had found. The first team never came back up. The second team found them dead at the bottom of the shaft with the same look on their faces as the ones you saw outside. Then it came up," Bob said. "The thing from the deep places. It climbed the shaft like it was walking upstairs. 12 feet tall and black as space with 6 arms that end in claws. But the worst part is not how it looks. The sound, whispered a Zephyrian telepath. It makes a sound that drives you mad. Most of our people could not think when it was near. They just ran screaming or fell down like the dead ones outside. Jake looked around the room at the frightened faces. These were tough people who worked in dangerous conditions every day. Mining operations always attracted the brave and the desperate. To see them all terrified of one creature was hard to believe. "Where is it now?" Rick Barnes asked as he checked his weapons. "Still out there," Zex replied. "It moves through the buildings like it owns them. Sometimes we hear it in the walls, or see it through the windows. It seems to be looking for something, but we do not know what." As if summoned by their words, a deep vibration ran through the building. The lights flickered, and dust fell from the ceiling. Through the thick walls came a sound like nothing Jake had ever heard. It was too low for human ears to fully understand. But it made his bones ache and his teeth hurt. Everyone in the room pressed closer together as the sound continued for almost a minute. When it finally stopped, the silence felt even more frightening than the noise. "That is how it announces itself," Bob Porter said with a shaky voice. "It has been doing that every few hours for 3 days. Each time some of us try to make a run for the ships, but nobody has made it past the main courtyard." Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but also something else. Unlike the alien survivors who seemed ready to give up hope, he felt angry. Whatever. This creature was it had trapped innocent people and killed others. That was something he could not accept. "We're getting you all out of here," Jake said with more confidence than he felt. "The Defiant can take everyone if we move in small groups." Commander Zex shook his massive head. "You do not understand human. This creature is not like anything we have faced before. It does not fight like an animal. It thinks and plans and learns from each attempt to stop it. Several rescue ships have already tried. Their crews are among the dead." The building shook again as something large moved past outside. Through a small window, Jake caught a glimpse of a shadow that seemed to move in ways that hurt his eyes to follow. He had no idea what they were dealing with, but he knew one thing for certain. He was not leaving these people to die. Lisa Hayes watched the security feeds from her portable scanner, while Jake planned their escape route. The cameras throughout the mining facility showed empty corridors and dark rooms, but every few minutes, something would move past too quickly to see clearly. The creature was definitely still in the complex and seemed to be patrolling in a pattern. "It's intelligent," Lisa said as she studied the movement data. "Look at these paths. It's not wandering randomly. It knows the layout of this place better than we do, and it's covering all the exits." Rick Barnes cleaned his plasma rifle for the 3rd time in an hour. "Intelligence doesn't matter if we can put enough firepower on target. What kind of weapons? Have you tried against this thing?" Commander Zex laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Everything we had. Plasma cannons, sonic disruptors, molecular acid, gravity hammers. The weapons hit the creature but do no damage. It is like shooting at empty air." Bob Porter nodded from his place by the wall. "The crystalline archons tried to shatter it with resonance weapons. Those things can crack a mountain in half, but the creature just stood there and took it. Then, it did something to them and they fell apart like broken glass." Jake studied the building schematics on his data pad. There had to be another way out, besides the main exits. Every mining operation had emergency tunnels and service passages. "What about the maintenance shafts that lead to the drilling platforms?" "Blocked," said a Zephyrian engineer. "The creature has been down there too. We found pieces of the maintenance robots scattered in the tunnels. It tears through metal like paper." Amy Ross came over the comm system from the ship. "Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from other rescue vessels. The Galactic Council sent a full battle group 3 hours ago. They should be arriving soon." This news should have made everyone feel better, but Jake noticed the survivors looked even more worried. Zex explained why. "Many ships have come to help us. Corvin battlecruisers, Mentari mineships, technosynthesis combat units. All have tried to deal with the creature and all have failed. The thing learns from each attack and becomes harder to stop. Lisa finished reviewing the medical data from the bodies they had found. These people didn't die from physical injuries. Their brainwave patterns show massive trauma to the parts of the mind that process fear and survival responses. It's like they experience terror so intense that their minds just shut down. The sound it makes, Bob Porter said quietly. When you hear it up close, your thoughts get all mixed up. Some people just fall down screaming. Others run until they collapse. A few try to hurt themselves just to make the fear stop. Jake felt frustrated by the complete lack of options. Every military force in the galaxy had failed to stop one creature. The survivors were too scared to even try escaping. His own crew was brave, but they were rescue specialists, not soldiers. Still, he could not accept that there was no solution. The building shook again, and this time the vibration lasted longer. Through the walls came that horrible sound that seemed to reach right into Jake's chest and squeeze his heart. But unlike the aliens in the room who all pressed together in terror, Jake found he could still think clearly. The sound was disturbing and frightening, but it did not paralyze him with fear. Rick Barnes also seemed less affected than the others. "That noise is bad, but I've heard worse," he said as he checked his equipment. "Remember that ion storm near Vega 7 when the ship's hull was singing like a broken violin for 6 hours? Lisa nodded in agreement. "It's definitely some kind of psychic or sonic weapon, but humans seem to have better resistance to it than other species. The question is why?" Before anyone could answer, they heard the sound of weapons fire from outside. Heavy plasma cannons and energy beams lit up the darkness beyond the windows. The Galactic Council's battle group had arrived and was engaging the creature. Everyone crowded around the small windows to watch the fight. Jake saw landing craft setting down near the main courtyard, while battle suits and combat robots moved toward the administration building. The coordination was perfect, and the firepower was overwhelming. For a moment, he thought they might actually succeed. Then the creature appeared in the middle of the courtyard, and Jake got his first clear look at it. The thing was even bigger than Zex had described. 12 feet of living darkness that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. 6 limbs moved with impossible grace, and its form shifted in ways that made Jake's eyes water. But the worst part was not how it looked, but how it moved with obvious intelligence and purpose. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes. The creature studied each weapon that hit it, then began to emit different sounds. The combat robots stopped, moving and fell over like their power had been cut. The battle suits seized up with their pilots screaming inside. The landing craft engines failed, and they crashed into the ground with grinding metal sounds. In less time than it took to describe the most powerful military force in the galaxy was reduced to scrap metal and terrified soldiers running for their lives. The creature watched them go, then turned toward the administration building. Jake had the distinct impression it was looking right at him through the window. "Now do you understand?" Commander Zex said with his voice full of despair. "This thing cannot be fought with weapons or tactics. It is something beyond our ability to comprehend or defeat." But Jake was thinking about something else entirely. During the entire battle, he had been able to watch and analyze without falling into panic like the alien survivors. His human crew had also remained functional while beings that were supposedly braver and stronger had been paralyzed with fear. "Lisa, I need you to run a scan on all the human survivors compared to the aliens," Jake said, as an idea began to form in his mind. "I want to know exactly how our brain chemistry differs when exposed to that creature's influence." Rick Barnes was already checking his gear. "Whatever you're planning, Captain, I'm with you. Sitting here waiting to die isn't working for anyone." Nash Turner came over the comm from the ship. "Captain, I've got the engines warmed up and ready. If you can get the survivors to the landing pad, I can have us off this rock in 2 minutes." Jake looked around the room at the 43 people who were depending on him to find a solution. The aliens had given up hope, but the humans were still thinking and planning. There had to be a reason why his species could function near the creature when others could not. "Here's what we're going to do," Jake announced to the room. "My team is going to go out there and try to communicate with this thing. Every attempt to fight it has failed, so maybe it's time to try talking." The reaction was immediate and loud. Commander Zek stood up to his full 8-foot height. "You cannot be serious, Captain Morrison. That creature has killed over 100 beings in 3 days. It does not want to talk." "How do we know that?" Jake replied. "Has anyone actually tried to communicate with it, or have they just assumed it was a monster and started shooting? Maybe it's trying to tell us something and we're too scared to listen." Bob Porter shook his head. "Son, I've been mining for 40 years and I know a dangerous animal when I see one. That thing down there isn't trying to communicate, it's hunting." But Lisa was already nodding as she understood Jake's reasoning. "The captain might be right. Think about it. If this creature just wanted to kill us all, it could have done that already. Instead, it's patrolling and watching like it's guarding something." Jake felt more confident as the idea developed. "Every species that has tried to deal with this creature has done it the same way. Show up with weapons and start fighting. What if that's exactly the wrong approach? What if we're dealing with something that sees armed response as a threat to whatever it's protecting?" The building shook one more time as something moved past outside. But now, instead of pure terror, Jake felt curiosity mixed with his fear. There was definitely intelligence behind those movements, and maybe even purpose beyond simple destruction. Tomorrow he would find out if a human could succeed where the galaxy's greatest warriors had failed. Jake spent the night studying everything the survivors could tell him about the creature, while Lisa analyzed the brain scan data she had collected. The results were fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. Human brain patterns showed stress and fear when exposed to the creature's influence, but remained functional. Other species showed complete breakdown of higher reasoning and motor control. "It's like the difference between being scared and being paralyzed," Lisa explained as she showed Jake the data on her scanner. "When a Corvan warrior hears that sound, their fight or flight response goes into overdrive and burns out. When a human hears it, we get frightened, but we can still think and plan." Dr. Martin Cole was the mining operations chief archaeologist, and he had been studying the planet's geology for 2 years before the creature appeared. He sat in the corner of the command room with a stack of data tablets and a worried expression. Jake had been trying to get him to talk about what they had found in the deep shaft, but the old man seemed reluctant to share his theories. "Dr. Cole," Jake said as he sat down next to the archaeologist, "I need to know everything about what you discovered down there. If I'm going to try communicating with this thing, I have to understand what we're dealing with." Martin looked up from his tablets with tired eyes. "Captain Morrison, I've been studying dead civilizations for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like what we found in that shaft. The metal structures down there are not from any known species, and they're old, millions of years old at least." "What kind of structures?" Lisa asked as she joined the conversation. "Complex geometric patterns carved into walls that stretch for miles underground, rooms filled with crystalline formations that pulse with their own light. And symbols, Captain. Thousands of symbols that don't match anything in our databases, but they're clearly some form of written language." Jake felt pieces of a puzzle starting to come together in his mind. "You think the creature is connected to whatever built those structures?" Martin nodded slowly. "The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. We drill into this ancient complex, and immediately something comes up from the depths to stop us. But here's the part that really worries me, Captain. The energy readings from those crystals match the signature of the creature itself." Rick Barnes had been listening from across the room. "You're saying this thing is some kind of guardian left behind by whoever built that place?" "That's my theory," Martin replied. "Though guardian might not be the right word. The creature's behavior suggests it's protecting something specific, rather than just driving us away from the site. Amy Ross came over the comm system with an update from the ship. Captain, I've been monitoring galactic news feeds, and the situation here is getting a lot of attention. The Galactic Council has declared this system off-limits to all civilian traffic, and they're sending their biggest warships. Jake shook his head. More weapons won't work any better than the ones that already failed. We need a different approach, as if responding to his words, the building shook with another one of the creature's regular patrols. But this time, Jake paid careful attention to the sound it made. The vibrations seemed to have patterns and rhythms, like a complex musical piece played, at frequencies too low for most ears to hear properly. Amy, are you recording these sounds from your position on the ship? Jake asked over the comm. Yes, Captain, I've got everything on file. Do you want me to try running them through the translation software? Do that, but also look for mathematical patterns. If this thing is trying to communicate, it might be using concepts that are universal regardless of species. Lisa was already working with her own equipment to analyze the sound patterns. Jake, there are definitely repeating sequences in these transmissions. It's not random noise. There's structure and purpose to it. Bob Porter spoke up from his place by the wall. I heard something else when that thing first came up from the shaft. Right before it started killing people, it made different sounds. Softer ones that almost sounded sad. Commander Zex snorted. You are imagining things human. That creature knows only destruction. But Jake was thinking about Bob's observation. What if it wasn't trying to kill anyone at first? What if it was trying to communicate and only became violent when people panicked and started shooting at it? The more Jake thought about it, the more sense it made. An ancient guardian awakens to find its protected site being disturbed by strangers with mining equipment. It tries to communicate, but the strangers are terrified by its appearance and sound. They attack, and it defends itself, but in doing so, it terrifies them even more. The cycle escalates until communication becomes impossible. I'm going out there, Jake announced to the room. Tonight, when it makes its next patrol, I'm going to try making contact. The reaction was immediate and loud. Every survivor began talking at once, trying to convince Jake that he was planning suicide. Commander Zex was the loudest voice. Captain Morrison, you cannot sacrifice yourself for a foolish theory. If you are wrong, that creature will kill you in seconds. If I'm right, then maybe we can end this without anyone else dying, Jake replied. Besides, I'm not going alone. Rick and Lisa are coming with me. Rick Barnes was already checking his equipment, but Lisa looked uncertain. Jake, I agree. That communication is worth trying, but maybe we should test your theory from a safe distance first. Amy came back over the comm with her analysis results. Captain, you were right about the mathematical patterns. These sound sequences follow a complex but consistent structure. It's definitely some form of language, though I can't translate the meaning yet. Jake felt more confident in his decision. If the creature was trying to communicate, then someone needed to try listening properly instead of just running away in fear. Amy, I want you to prepare a basic response sequence. Use the same mathematical patterns but simplified. If this thing is intelligent, it should recognize an attempt at communication. Martin Cole stood up slowly from his corner. Captain, if you're really going to try this, I want to come with you. I've studied the symbols from the underground complex, and I might be able to help if the creature tries to show us something visual. Absolutely not, Jake said immediately. You're a civilian, and this is too dangerous. With respect, Captain, I know more about what we found down in that shaft than anyone else alive. If you want to communicate with something that's been guarding those ruins for millions of years, then you need someone who understands what it's protecting. Jake looked around the room at the frightened faces of the survivors. These people had been trapped here for 3 days, watching their friends die, while the most powerful military forces in the galaxy failed to save them. Someone had to take a risk, or they would all die waiting for a solution that would never come. All right, Dr. Cole, you can come, but you stay behind me at all times, Jake decided. Rick, I want you positioned where you can cover our retreat if this goes wrong. Lisa, Bring your medical scanner and communication equipment. We'll try to make contact during the creature's next patrol cycle. Nash Turner came over the comm from the ship. Captain, I don't like this plan, but if you're going through with it, I'll have the engines ready for immediate takeoff. First sign of trouble, and I'm coming to get you. Jake spent the next hour preparing with his team while the survivors watched with expressions ranging from hope to despair. Some thought he was brave for trying something new, while others were convinced he was throwing his life away. But everyone agreed that the current situation could not continue much longer. When the building shook with the creature's next patrol, Jake and his team moved to the main entrance. Rick took position near the blast doors, while Jake, Lisa, and Martin stepped outside into the dark courtyard where so many others had died. The night air was cold and full of strange sounds from the alien wilderness beyond the mining complex. Emergency lights cast long shadows between the buildings, while overhead the stars seemed unusually bright. Jake could hear his own heartbeat as they waited for the creature to appear. Then it came around the corner of the main laboratory building, and Jake got his second clear look at the thing that had terrified the galaxy. 12 feet of living darkness that moved with impossible grace on 6 limbs that seemed to bend in too many directions. Its form shifted and flowed like liquid shadow given purpose and intelligence. But instead of running or reaching for weapons, Jake Morrison did something that no other being in the galaxy had tried. He stood his ground and waited for the creature to notice him. When those alien eyes turned in his direction, Jake looked directly into them and spoke in a calm, clear voice. "We want to understand what you're trying to protect." The creature stopped moving when Jake spoke. For a moment that felt like hours. It simply stared at the humans standing in the courtyard. Jake could feel his heart pounding, but forced himself to remain calm and keep eye contact with those alien orbs that seemed to hold depths of ancient intelligence. Then the creature made a sound unlike any of the threatening vibrations they had heard before. This was softer and more complex, with harmonic patterns that seemed almost musical. Lisa immediately began recording while Martin pulled out his tablet to check if any of the sound patterns matched the symbols they had found underground. "Amy, are you getting this?" Jake whispered into his comm unit. "Recording everything, Captain," Amy replied from the ship. "The mathematical structure is much more sophisticated than the earlier transmissions. It's definitely trying to communicate something specific." The creature moved closer, but not in the aggressive hunting pattern they had observed through the security feeds. Its approach was cautious and deliberate, like it was trying not to frighten them. When it was about 20 feet away, it stopped and made another series of sounds while gesturing with one of its limbs toward the main drilling facility. "It wants us to follow," Lisa said as she analyzed her scanner readings. "But Captain, the stress patterns in its vocalizations suggest urgency mixed with what I can only describe as frustration." Jake made the decision that would change everything. "All right, we follow, but slowly and carefully. Rick, stay in position to cover us if this goes wrong." They walked across the courtyard, with the creature leading the way. Jake noticed it moved differently when not hunting or defending itself. The liquid grace was still there, but now it seemed almost protective, as it checked corners and passages to make sure their path was safe. At the main drilling platform, the creature stopped and made more complex sounds while pointing down the shaft that the miners had used to reach the underground complex. The meaning was obvious even without translation. It wanted them to see what lay beneath the surface. "The elevator is still working," Martin said as he checked the control panel. "But Captain, going down there with this creature could be a trap." Jake studied the alien being that towered over them with its 6 limbs and shifting form. Every instinct told him this was dangerous, but his rational mind saw intelligence and purpose rather than mindless aggression. "Amy, run a full scan of the shaft and let me know if you detect any threats." While they waited for the scan results, Jake tried something that no one else had attempted. He pointed to himself and said clearly, "Jake." Then he pointed to Lisa and Martin and gave their names. Finally, he pointed to the creature and made a questioning sound. The response was immediate and surprising. The creature pointed to itself with one limb and made a long, complex sound that seemed to contain multiple harmonic layers. Then it repeated the gesture and made a shorter version of the same sound. "It's telling us its name," Lisa said with excitement. "Or at least some kind of identifier." Martin was comparing the creature's sounds to his database of underground symbols. "Captain, look at this. The harmonic pattern matches a symbol we found carved over the entrance to the largest chamber complex. If I'm reading this correctly, the symbol means something like keeper or guardian in the ancient language." Amy came over the comm with her scan results. "The shaft is clear, Captain, but I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the complex below. Whatever is down there is still active after millions of years." Jake made his decision. "We're going down. If this Guardian wants to show us something, then maybe that's the key to understanding what's happening here." The elevator ride down the mining shaft took 15 minutes and descended nearly a mile into the planet's crust. The creature rode with them, making soft sounds that Lisa identified as non-threatening communication attempts. When they reached the bottom, Jake saw immediately why the miners had been so excited about their discovery. The elevator opened onto a vast chamber carved from living rock and filled with structures that clearly did not belong to any known civilization. Crystalline formations grew from the walls and ceiling in geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with inner light. Metal walkways connected platforms that held devices of unknown purpose, and everywhere there were symbols carved into every available surface. But what took Jake's breath away was the scale of it all. This was not just a room or even a building. It was an entire city that stretched away into the darkness beyond the range of their lights. The mining operation had barely scratched the surface of something that might be larger than anything humans had ever discovered. The creature moved ahead of them through the ancient passages, making sounds that seemed to express both pride and sadness. It led them to a central platform where a massive crystalline structure rose toward the chamber ceiling. The crystal formation was clearly artificial and hummed with energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "My God," Martin whispered as he stared at the symbols carved around the base of the crystal. "Captain, this isn't just a monument or storage facility. Based on these markings, I think this entire complex is some kind of memorial or tomb." Lisa was taking readings with her scanner, and the results made no sense by conventional understanding. "Jake, the energy patterns coming from that crystal are unlike anything in our databases. It's not just storing power, it's storing something else, something that reads almost like brainwave patterns." The creature approached the crystal formation and placed all 6 of its limbs against the glowing surface. Immediately, the entire chamber filled with new sounds and lights as ancient systems came online. Holographic displays appeared in the air, showing images that took Jake's breath away. He saw a civilization of beings that looked similar to their guardian, but different in subtle ways. Millions of them living in cities that spanned entire continents. He saw art and music and scientific achievements that made human technology look primitive, and he saw the end of it all in images that spoke of transcendence and transformation rather than death and destruction. "They're gone," Jake said as understanding dawned. "This entire species ascended to some higher form of existence and left this guardian behind to protect their memorial." The creature turned toward Jake and made a sound that, even without translation, clearly expressed agreement and relief. For the first time since awakening from its long vigil, it had found beings who could understand its purpose and the sacred nature of what it protected. Martin was frantically taking notes as he studied the holographic records. "Captain, the mining operation was damaging critical systems throughout this complex. Every crystal they removed was actually a memory storage device containing the preserved experiences of individuals from this civilization." Lisa looked at her scanner readings with new understanding. That's why the creature was so aggressive. It wasn't trying to kill people for invading its territory. It was trying to protect what amounts to the souls of billions of beings who trusted it to guard their legacy. Jake felt a deep sense of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Here was a guardian who had waited millions of years for someone to understand its mission. The creatures that had attacked the miners and rescue teams had not been motivated by hatred or territorial instinct, but by desperate grief at seeing sacred memories destroyed by ignorance. The guardian made more sounds and gestured toward other passages leading deeper into the complex. Jake realized they had only seen a tiny fraction of what lay beneath Kepler 442b. This was not just a tomb, but a complete preservation of an entire civilization that had achieved something beyond physical existence. "Amy, come in," Jake called over his comm. "I need you to establish a direct line to Galactic Command. Tell them to stop all military operations immediately. We're not dealing with a monster down here. We're dealing with the caretaker of the most important archaeological discovery in galactic history." As Jake spoke, the Guardian moved closer, and for the first time since the crisis began, it did not radiate menace or threat. Instead, Jake felt something like gratitude and hope emanating from the ancient being. After eons of solitary guardianship, it had finally found allies who could help it preserve the memories of its beloved dead. The creature that had terrorized the galaxy was not a beast at all, but a mourner standing watch over the greatest memorial ever created. Over the next 6 hours, Jake and his team worked with the Guardian to understand the scope of what lay beneath Kepler 442b. The ancient being, whose name translated roughly as Last Song, guided them through chambers that contained the preserved consciousness patterns of an entire civilization. Each crystalline formation held thousands of individual memories and experiences from beings who had chosen transcendence over physical existence. Lisa discovered that human brainwave patterns had an unusual compatibility with the ancient technology. When she placed her hand on one of the smaller crystal formations, she could actually sense the thoughts and emotions stored within. "Jake, it's incredible. I can feel their joy and sadness and hope like they're still alive somewhere inside these crystals." Martin spent his time documenting the symbolic language that covered every surface of the complex. The writing told the story of a species that had achieved perfect harmony between technology and consciousness before choosing to abandon physical form entirely. "They didn't die, Captain. They evolved beyond the need for bodies and left this place as a monument to what they had been." Last Song communicated through a combination of harmonic sounds and direct interaction with the memorial systems. Jake learned that the Guardian was not just protecting stored memories, but actively maintaining the complex technology that kept billions of consciousness patterns stable across millions of years. Amy established communication links between the underground complex and the Defiant, allowing her to coordinate with Lisa's equipment. "Captain, I'm detecting quantum resonance patterns throughout the entire facility. This technology is more advanced than anything the Galactic Council has ever encountered." The breakthrough came when Jake realized that the mining operation had not just been removing crystals, but had actually been damaging the power systems that kept the memorial functioning. Each extracted crystal had contained part of the network that preserved the consciousness patterns. Last Song's increasingly desperate attacks had been attempts to prevent the complete collapse of systems that held billions of souls. "No wonder it was so aggressive," Rick Barnes said as he studied the damage reports. "From its perspective, we were committing genocide against an entire civilization that had trusted it to keep them safe." Jake worked with Last Song to assess how much of the memorial could be repaired. The Guardian showed them chambers where consciousness patterns had already been lost forever when critical crystals were removed. The empty spaces in the crystal formations looked like wounds in the living memorial. But there was hope as well. Most of the complex remained intact and functional. The consciousness patterns were stable and could continue to exist for millions more years if properly maintained. What Last Song needed was not just protection from future damage, but active assistance in maintaining the ancient technology. Lisa made the most important discovery when she found that human neural patterns could interface directly with the memorial systems in ways that other species could not. Jake, when I connect with these crystals, I can actually help stabilize the consciousness patterns inside. It's like the ancient technology was designed to work with minds similar to ours. This revelation explained why humans had been less affected by Last Song's psychic emanations. The same neural patterns that gave them resistance to the Guardian's fear effects also made them compatible with the memorial technology. Humans were uniquely suited to help maintain the greatest preservation project in galactic history. Jake made the decision that would change humanity's role in the galaxy forever. Amy, send a message to Earth Command and the Galactic Council. Tell them we need to establish a permanent research station here. This memorial needs to be protected and maintained, and humans are the only species capable of interfacing with the technology. The response from the surface came quickly. The military forces that had failed to defeat Last Song were amazed to learn that the creature was actually seeking their help rather than trying to destroy them. Commander Zex of the Corvan Empire was the first to volunteer for the new protection mission. Captain Morrison, if this Guardian has been protecting something sacred for millions of years, then it deserves our respect and assistance. The Corvan Empire will provide whatever security forces are needed to ensure this site remains safe. Other species quickly joined the effort once they understood the true nature of the discovery. The Mentari Collective offered their expertise in consciousness research. The Technosynthesis Union provided advanced maintenance equipment. The crystalline archons shared their knowledge of crystalline technology matrices, but it was the humans who took the leading role in the memorial project. Lisa volunteered to remain on Kepler 442b as the first human liaison with Last Song. Martin established a research team dedicated to translating and preserving the historical records contained in the consciousness patterns. Jake spent days working with Last Song to understand the full scope of the Guardian's responsibilities. The ancient being had not just been protecting one memorial, but monitoring 17 similar sites across the galaxy. Each location contained the preserved consciousness, patterns of civilizations that had achieved transcendence in the distant past. There are others like you, Jake said to Last Song as they stood before the central crystal formation. Other Guardians watching over other memorials. The Guardian's response was filled with loneliness and hope. For millions of years it had maintained contact with other sites, but had never been able to share its burden with beings who could understand its purpose. Now it had found species capable of helping preserve the memories of countless civilizations. Amy worked with Galactic Command to establish new protocols for approaching ancient sites that might contain similar Guardians. The military disasters that had occurred at Kepler 442b taught everyone that first contact with unknown intelligences required communication attempts before weapons deployment. The mining consortium that had originally discovered the memorial complex agreed to relocate their operations and provide funding for the new research station. Bob Porter and the other surviving miners volunteered to help with the construction since they felt responsible for the damage that had been done to the ancient systems. Jake stood in the central memorial chamber, watching Lisa work with Last Song to repair damaged consciousness patterns. The Guardian that had terrorized the galaxy now moved with gentle precision as it guided human hands in the delicate work of preserving alien souls. "It's beautiful," Lisa said, as she successfully stabilized a cluster of consciousness patterns that had been damaged by the mining operation. "I can feel their gratitude, Jake. These beings have been waiting millions of years for someone to help them maintain their memorial." Last Song made sounds that the translation system interpreted as profound thanks mixed with relief. For the first time since its species achieved transcendence, the Guardian was not alone in its sacred duty. Humans had proven themselves worthy of sharing the responsibility for preserving the greatest treasure in the galaxy. Jake realized that humanity had found its unique purpose among the stars. Other species excelled at warfare or technology or psychic abilities. But humans had something equally valuable: the ability to understand and communicate with forms of intelligence that seemed completely alien to everyone else. The beast, that had obeyed no one until a human looked into its eyes, had become humanity's first teacher in the arts of consciousness, preservation, and memorial maintenance. What had begun as a rescue mission had become the foundation for humanity's most important contribution to galactic civilization. As Jake prepared to return to the surface and report to Galactic Command, he knew that this was only the beginning. Somewhere among the stars, 16 other Guardians waited at their memorial sites, hoping for the day when someone would look into their eyes and understand what they were trying to protect. The galaxy was full of ancient watchers who had been dismissed as monsters simply because no one had ever tried to communicate with them. Humanity's gift was not superior weapons or technology, but the willingness to see intelligence and purpose where others saw only threats to be destroyed. 6 months after first contact with Last Song, the memorial site on Kepler 442b had become the most important research facility in the galaxy. The permanent station housed scientists and technicians from dozens of species all working together to understand and preserve the ancient consciousness patterns. But at the center of it all were the humans who had proven uniquely capable of interfacing with the memorial technology. Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the new facility, watching status displays that showed the health of billions of preserved consciousness patterns. The memorial was not just stable, but actually growing stronger as human technicians learned to enhance the ancient systems with modern technology. Lisa Hayes had become the leading expert in consciousness preservation, working directly with Last Song to develop new techniques for maintaining the crystal matrices. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command," Amy Ross announced from her communications station. "Admiral Chen wants to speak with you immediately." Jake took the call in his private office where the walls were decorated with translations of ancient symbols that told the story of the transcended civilization. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the holographic display with an expression that mixed excitement and nervousness. "Captain Morrison, I have new orders for you in the Defiant. Long-range sensors have detected anomalies at 3 other star systems that match the energy signatures from Kepler 442b. The Galactic Council wants you to investigate these sites personally." Jake felt his pulse quicken with anticipation. "Are we talking about other memorial sites, Admiral?" "That's what we need you to find out. Each location has been avoided by interstellar traffic for centuries because of reports about dangerous creatures or unexplained phenomena. But now that we know what to look for, the pattern seems obvious. The first site was in the Veil Nebula, where traders had reported encounters with a massive crystalline entity that destroyed ships without warning. The second was near a red giant star where mining operations had been abandoned after workers claimed to see ghostly figures in the asteroid fields. The third was in the galactic rim where explorers spoke of hearing impossible music coming from empty space. Jake assembled his team for the new mission. Lisa would remain on Kepler 442b to continue her work with Last Song, but Martin Cole volunteered to join the exploration effort. Rick Barnes upgraded the Defiant's sensor arrays and communication systems based on everything they had learned about Guardian detection and contact protocols. "Remember what we learned here," Jake told his crew as they prepared to depart. "These Guardians have been alone for millions of years protecting something sacred. They're not monsters to be destroyed, but caretakers to be respected and assisted." The journey to the Veil Nebula took 2 weeks through hyperspace. When they dropped back into normal space, Jake immediately saw why traders avoided this region. A massive crystalline structure drifted between the stars, clearly artificial, but unlike anything in the known databases. It was beautiful and terrifying, at the same time pulsing with inner light that seemed to respond to their presence. Amy detected the Guardian before the visual sensors picked it up. The entity was even larger than Last Song and seemed to be composed of living crystal that flowed and reformed as it moved through space. Its form was radically different, but the energy signature and communication patterns were unmistakably similar to what they had encountered on Kepler 442b. "Same approach as before," Jake ordered as the crystalline guardian moved toward their ship. "No weapons, no aggressive maneuvers. Amy, start transmitting the mathematical greeting sequence that last song taught us." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The crystalline guardian began emitting complex harmonic patterns that resonated through the Defiant's hull like cosmic music. But instead of the frightening psychic emanations that paralyzed other species, Jake and his crew found the sounds almost hypnotically beautiful. Martin worked frantically to record and analyze the communication patterns. "Captain, this guardian is trying to tell us something about stellar cartography. I think it's showing us the locations of other memorial sites throughout the galaxy." The crystalline entity guided them to its memorial complex, which turned out to be the artificial structure they had seen drifting in space. Inside, Jake found chambers filled with consciousness patterns from a species that had achieved transcendence through harmony with cosmic forces. The preserved beings had existed as pure energy before choosing to store their essence in crystalline matrices. This guardian, whose name translated as eternal harmony, had been maintaining its memorial for over 10 million years. Like last song, it had been completely alone in its sacred duty until the humans arrived with their unique ability to interface with ancient consciousness preservation technology. The second site near the red giant star revealed a guardian that existed partially in normal space and partially in hyperspace dimensions. The ghostly figures that had frightened miners were actually projections of the guardian trying to warn them away from sensitive memorial systems buried in the asteroid fields. The third guardian in the galactic rim was perhaps the most alien of all. It existed as a collective consciousness distributed across multiple physical forms that moved through space like a living fleet. The impossible music that explorers heard was actually the guardian singing to itself as it maintained memorial. Systems spread across dozens of worlds. Each discovery followed the same pattern. Ancient guardians protecting memorial sites filled with the consciousness patterns of transcended civilizations. Each guardian had been alone for millions of years, desperately trying to maintain systems beyond their individual capability. And each one welcomed human assistance with gratitude that brought tears to Jake's eyes. Within 2 years, Jake's mission had expanded into the Memorial Preservation Corps, with humans serving as liaisons to 17 different guardian entities across the galaxy. The discovery changed humanity's status from newcomers to essential partners in preserving the greatest treasures of cosmic history. Lisa Hayes became the Director of Consciousness Preservation Research, working with Guardians to develop new techniques for maintaining and enhancing memorial systems. Martin Cole led the historical translation project that was slowly revealing the stories of dozens of transcended civilizations. Amy Ross established the communication protocols that allowed Guardians to coordinate their efforts across galactic distances for the first time in millions of years. Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral and given command of the entire Memorial Preservation Fleet. His ships carried human technicians to Guardian sites throughout the galaxy, where they worked alongside ancient caretakers to preserve the memories of beings who had achieved transcendence. But the most important change was in how the galaxy viewed encounters with unknown intelligences. The Memorial Preservation Protocols required all exploration missions to attempt communication before considering hostile action. Dozens of conflicts were avoided when species learned to look for intelligence and purpose behind seemingly threatening behavior. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, Jake often thought about that first night on Kepler 442b when he had decided to look into Last Song's eyes instead of running away in fear. That single moment of courage and curiosity had revealed humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. Other species brought military might or technological genius or psychic powers to the galactic community. Humans brought something equally valuable: The ability to recognize intelligence and find common ground even with the most alien forms of consciousness. The beast that obeyed no one until a human looked into its eyes had become the first of many teachers who showed humanity its true purpose among the stars. In a galaxy full of ancient watchers who had been dismissed as monsters, humans had found their calling as the species that could bridge the gap between the living and the transcended. Last Song still maintained its vigil on Kepler 442b, but it was no longer alone. Human partners worked alongside the Guardian to preserve billions of consciousness patterns while new memorial sites were discovered throughout the galaxy. The ancient being that had once terrified entire civilizations now served as humanity's guide to understanding forms of existence beyond physical life. Jake had learned that the greatest discoveries came not from conquering the unknown, but from having the courage to communicate with it. In the vast darkness between stars, countless guardians waited for someone brave enough to look into their eyes and ask what they were trying to protect. Humanity had become the species that answered that call, turning beasts into teachers and monsters into mentors in the endless quest to preserve the memories of those who had gone before. The galaxy was no longer a place where the unknown was automatically feared and destroyed. Thanks to humanity's unique gift for communication, it had become a place where even the most alien intelligence could find understanding and assistance in fulfilling its sacred purpose.